Hey, yesterday I talked about the abomination of The Last Jedi, the recent Star Wars movie, and I spoke about starting a movement. We're gonna call that it be invalidated, and I described it as the Colosseo Vacantists. And what that means in Latin is the Colosseum is vacant. So the players, the actors, the people who are currently there, they're invalid. And it's taken from that Catholic sect I talked about that they reject the last pope, and their name is the Sede Vacantist, and it means the seat of Peter is currently unoccupied. They think all the popes since the Vatican II are invalid or something like that. But there's good news in this, is that I researched this in history. There have been some secessionist movements that then won and declared the previous popes invalid. So that's our goal. That's what we're going to set out to do. This Star Wars and those moving forward off of this storyline are invalid. We reject them, and we're going to see the true storytellers come back. So. I mean, there's some basic fundamental problems that I think really do invalidate it. They invalidate so much of what Star Wars was about, the rules of Star Wars that we've become accustomed to, and that gave us an understandable vision of in this case a galaxy, a world, a culture, whatever you would want to call it, with that was bound by certain things. That's important, and you can't just throw them out. Now you're doing something else. You're not part of the Star Wars series, which I think is what they've done. They've created this other storyline. It's not Star Wars, and it's not Star Wars for several reasons. But before I get into that, I want to discuss. I've been thinking the last day. There are some basic. I don't want to call them flaws, right? So we have to think about it theologically. There are some difficulties that Star Wars has had from the beginning that let's say we have yet to see revealed wisdom for. We await more revealed wisdom for. There were some structural difficulties in the original Star Wars, I've come to understand, that we're waiting for more revelation that will explain things or put things right in the end. At the top of that list is that from the beginning, Star Wars has had an overly good versus evil, the dark side versus the good side. The good side, the rebels, the Jedi's being almost impossibly good, the dark side being almost impossibly bad. Like, you don't even really get a sense of what tempted people to the dark side other than just power and glory, power, this kind of just very sort of shallow stuff. In the epic tales, King Arthur, or I talked about the Iliad yesterday, Achilles, Hector. These types of the enemies are formidable. They're people you respect, and they're people you even understand their common interests. Or excuse me, you understand their interests as opposed to your interest, and the stories will sort of move along in that direction. You just have two great forces clashing against each other, and sometimes there's descriptions of why people might switch sides, go to one or the other, because. Yeah, the bad isn't as bad as the dark side of the Force and the Empire, and the good is, I mean, yeah, the Rebel Knights, there's no divisions between them that ever get talked about. Everything is settled with a pat on the back, camaraderie. They're for the people, they're for freedom. The people who they or the creatures like Ewoks who they protect, like they're charming. You like them. They're good. There's really nothing there's nothing bad about the good, about the Rebel Alliance or the Republic, and there's nothing good about the Empire. They're in these just over the top evil ways, and that was there from the beginning. What they did in this one is they just went completely over the top with it, and they stripped the dignity and the majesty of our foes in the Empire. Darth Vader was, badass, man. I mean, even if you didn't like what he stood for, you wanted to see him get defeated. He was formidable. I mean, he had more force than anybody, and people snapped to it. I mean, when he walked into a room, people just, they just lost it. I mean, he was that. And you respected him. The guys, they went to this extreme in this one. The admiral of the fleet he was like a caricature of a British, snobby, obnoxious prep school kid. And the supreme leader in this case was another he was disgusting. Like he had yellow crooked teeth. He's Supreme Leader. He couldn't afford a dentist. And he was another like deformed, wrinkled, 200-year-old looking white guy, which kind of suggests is there like an inner council of 200-year-old looking, deformed, wrinkled white guys who just like trade power? Like that didn't make any sense. They were not majestic. The bad guys were not. And then adding that internet comedy type thing where, the admiral gets put on hold and doesn't hear the guy after. That's ridiculous. They were stripped. The bad guys were stripped entirely of their majesty. They were no longer. I mean, Darth Vader was never Hector to begin with. I mean, that's sort of back to this basic structural problem. You never had. You couldn't understand what it was that made people go to the dark side of the Force very well. Star Wars, we recommend as Colosseo Vacantist that in future, after the redemption of the series, in future, it would be perhaps a more enriching story to describe good on the Empire side and bad on the Rebel Alliance side, or difficulties, or more of an ambiguous kind of richer, deeper struggle would perhaps be helpful. We wish to see these things in future episodes, and that would also solve the problem of just what they're doing now, which is just the Rebel wins and they get big and everybody's on their side, and then they're defeated and shrink, and then the Empire is big and everybody defeat, and then back forth. You can only do that so much before it starts to get boring. So we hope to see a departure from that in the future. An analogy would be, there's a lot of Roman sort of historical stuff, like the Republic versus the Empire. That's oftentimes associated with the late Roman Republic, the early Empire. Well, the late Roman Republic was like miserable for the average man on the street. The early Empire of Rome, of the real ancient Rome, that was when they had aquifers, the Roman road system. Like life for the average Roman was no longer just these insane battles between the aristocrats that they were involved in. Life for the average person. So there were like benefits and drawbacks to both. Introducing that kind of thing into the narrative, I think would make it better, would make it richer, would make it more real, would make it more layered, and I think create a lot more fans. So this is what we hope to see. Other things, violating the laws that of previous Star Wars episodes. I mean, that's where you're now something else. You're not when hyperspace is weaponized. You're not in Star Wars. That didn't work in the past. I mean, that's a direct violation of other things, other ways that we've come to understand hyperspace. Someone can become a Jedi in a montage, like Karate Kid, a little song in the background, somebody's waving their lightsaber around. In 30 seconds, now they're a Jedi with super Jedi powers. Now, what was all that stuff in Star Wars about the problems that Luke went through and the intense training he had to get in a short period of time, which was certainly longer than a montage swinging a lightsaber around? You've just made that irrelevant. Other irrelevant things. Now, this one I'm less irritated by, but still a little bit irritated. In this, for our doctrinal positions, we'll say in the following, we have room for negotiation to solve this schism. But the fact that the aristocratic marriages that we as plebeians are watching and being fascinated by, between Han Solo and the Princess Leia, Luke Skywalker was the son of Darth Vader. There was story behind that. The Force just jumped to a nobody. The Force, the seed of the Force, as we were being told about, to Rey, to this young woman. How does that work? So now all of that previous stuff doesn't matter. Like, it's gone. That lineage is gone. You have, we don't know what Han Solo and Princess Leia's son, what's going to happen with him. But there's something wrong. Like, you can't just eliminate that line. You can't just eliminate that story, because now again you're talking about something else. Okay, another point. Luke Skywalker deserves an heroic death. Luke Skywalker was such a positive. yeah, super aristocratic warrior hero type, but also there was a common man thing to him. We watched him, you know, do mundane activities on a farm and things like this. There is an everyman sense of the guy, and was just positive, was just, you know, to kill him like that. You can't do that. To end his life in just such a disgusting, grotesque way, that's unacceptable, and we reject that. Also, another point that we absolutely reject is this heavy social justice warrior politicalization. I mean, the plot with Princess Leia and the purple hair admiral, and then kind of the crass fighter jockey guy, that was in your face. I mean, not only did it violate the warrior nobility that we had come to identify with in Star Wars and replace it with a female warrior nobility, but it was so cheap and condescending to this. Well, we have this young hothead, but we as women, no, let's use our brains, and we'll not only escape, but we'll prove victorious in the end. But why didn't they tell them the plans? Why? And then, of course, hyperspace had to be violated, turned weaponized. A new law of physics in Star Wars had to be created in order to, make that plot work. It was so in your face, social justice warrior. We don't want that. I mean, it was like, the Ghostbusters when it wasn't just kind of working characters into a cast were female, but just making a big deal about like feminine domination over men. That was like, don't do that. That was unacceptable. We reject that. So yeah, unacceptable bad guys, violations of well-established principles of just how things worked in previous Star Wars. The in-your-face social justice warriorism, unacceptable. That in-your-face social justicing and Luke's death. On these points, we break with Star Wars. We break with them on these points. These things must be remedied in order to create a whole faith again, the true Star Wars way. But on these points, we will not move. We will not budge. This is a sacrilege, and it must be remedied. So we declare our rebellion.